Final Fantasy is a series that is constantly evolving and changing the formula. 12 introduced the Gambit system. 15 changed the combat into real-time combat and open world. Final Fantasy VII Remake blended both turn-based and real-time into the combat system. Now Final Fantasy XVI is out and has made the most changes to a Final Fantasy game to date. The combat is now action-based. Some people even call this game Devil May Cry Final Fantasy. You are now only controlling one character and they have gotten rid of the party system entirely. Final Fantasy XVI is also the first game in the mainline series to be rated M. Keep in mind that this review is spoiler-free. I will not be discussing the story and will only be showing footage from the first few hours of gameplay. I have fully beaten the game twice now, once on the action difficulty, then on New Game Plus Final Fantasy difficulty. Let's get into the combat. The combat is much more action RPG based now than previous Final Fantasies. They have completely gotten rid of the turn-based system and made it much more real-time action-based. Unlike other Final Fantasies, this game revolves around only one character. Throughout your journey of the game, you will be constantly gaining new abilities via different Eikons. You will be gaining those different abilities for about the first 75% of the game, constantly learning new combos, tactics, etc. This allows you to completely customize your character to your playstyle and experiment. You are allowed to equip 3 different Eikons at once, and each one has their own unique set of abilities. This allows you to mix and match, and this is one of the most fun I've had in the game's combat in a long time. I also wanted to discuss the boss fights. The boss fights in this game are some of the best I've ever experienced in a game. They are giant, epic fights with a ton of cinematics. I really hope that whenever they make Final Fantasy XVII, they still keep the large-scale boss fights that 16 has. Let's talk about the difficulty of the game. The game is very easy. In the beginning of the game, you have 2 different difficulty options to choose from: story-focused or action-focused. Story-focused is your easy difficulty option, and action-focused is the normal difficulty option. I chose action-focused and still blew through the combat with no problem. I didn't even die once. There was one time when I was close to dying, but I survived. After you beat the game, you get the option to choose the Final Fantasy mode difficulty option when you start New Game Plus. This increases the level cap to 100, and the enemies are slightly harder. When playing through this, the enemies are harder to kill, but it still isn't that difficult in my opinion. Let's discuss the performance. There are 2 graphics options, graphics mode and performance mode. Graphics mode is 1440p upscaled to 4K locked at 30 FPS. Performance mode is 1080p with a target resolution upscaled to 4K, which targets 60 FPS. Keep in mind, it is not locked at 60 FPS. I played in performance mode. In combat, performance mode is great, it feels extremely smooth, but for some reason outside of combat, there are heavy frame dips at times, which is weird. You would think it'd be the opposite, that during exploration, that you would get more of like a 60 FPS feeling and in combat it'd dip, but no, it was the other way around, which I thought was very odd. There are times when I walk through a door and randomly the FPS will tank for a few seconds. Story-wise with Final Fantasy XVI is great when it gets going, but it definitely has some pacing issues. What happens is that the story drastically builds to an epic boss fight, then the story completely slows down to a halt. It kept going up and down like that throughout the entire game. I also wanted to mention that this is extremely cutscene heavy. If I had to guess, I'd say at least 60% of the game is cutscenes. There are times where you'll put down the controller for at least 15 minutes just watching a cutscene and nothing else. Walk down a hallway, then watch another cutscene. There are times that the story gets very emotional and will hook you in. Let's get into world exploration. What I would describe this game as is open hub. It is not an open world game like Final Fantasy XV was. Think of it like what Final Fantasy VII Remake had. There are open locations that you can run around and explore, but you are generally walking down a linear path. There is a big issue I found with the game, the side quests. There are so many side quests which you would think is great because it extends your time in the game. Well, not these side quests. Most of them are not good at all. There was a time where I had to literally deliver a meal to 3 different people in the main area and that was it. They are very fetch questy. For those of you who don't know, they hired the director of Final Fantasy XIV, which is the MMO, to direct Final Fantasy XVI. You can definitely see that in the side quests since it has the MMO effect. They do not get good until towards the very end of the game. Those side quests are really good and felt like it could have been part of the main story. It ties up a ton of loose ends and brings more character development for the main characters. As for other side content, you have something called hunts. There is a hunt board at the main base where you see random monsters posted. They are each left with a rank, which will show you how difficult that given monster is when you encounter it. Most of the monsters will tell you a general location of where it is, but you still have to go to your map and look for it. Looking for and finding these monsters were a ton of fun in my opinion. For those of you who don't know, I review games on a buy or wait for sale basis. I recommend to buy this game. Although the story has some pacing issues, the combat makes up for it. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Final Fantasy XVI. Have you picked up Final Fantasy XVI? Did you enjoy your time in it? Let me know down below. If this review is helpful to you, leave a like. If not, then leave a dislike. I will see you in the next video.